Let's talk about this with Rebecca Ryan. She's campaign director at Defund the BBC. Good morning to you, Rebecca.
Morning, Julia.
There's no doubt at all the BBC just kind of do your work for you, don't they? I mean, on a weekly basis, they make more bad decisions. What I find extraordinary about the Gregg Wallace story is that there are numerous allegations, there are numerous complaints. I mean, they've had someone, some senior executive gives him clearly a stiff talking to. Of course, he'd have gone for nar at that point and mimed oral sex, which apparently seems to be, from what the women are saying, what he did routinely with any woman he dealt with on the show, whether a contestant or production assistant. And nothing was done. It was routine. It's happening. Now, he's denied allegations. There's an investigation, but there is a heap of women coming up forward and going, yeah, this was routine behaviour from Gregg Wallace. Definitely not acceptable in the modern-day workplace. You don't have to be woke. You don't have to be oversensitive and not like a joke. It's just inappropriate. But here's the thing. BBC doesn't act on that. But now, because they're getting a lot of criticism, the BBC decided to pull the 2 Christmas specials. Now, I don't watch the show. I don't care about that. But what is the point of pulling the specials other than a Stalinist Orwellian style Gregg Wallace no longer exists thing? What do you make of it?
Well, I completely agree with you, actually, and Benedict there. I think that, the money has been spent, and what it comes back to is that this is licence fee payers' money that has been spent on these programmes. This guy is clearly a pig, let's just put it, how it is. It may not be, it might not cross the line of being illegal, but, he's been known by the BBC to be, a sex pest, essentially, for well over a decade. But as you say, the money's been spent. The issue for the BBC is people can't vote with their feet, and that's what people get really upset about.
And that's the basis of your campaign, isn't it? But the thing is, but then people are genuinely saying, we've got some Labour MPs who frankly should have better things to worry about, given the state of the country, saying, it could be triggering for some of these women. It could be triggering if they saw him on telly. He's not being accused of rape or paedophilia. He's been accused of inappropriate behaviour. This is not the same thing. We shouldn't conflate these things. The idea that, if you don't want to watch Gregg Wallace, which I don't, and I didn't before I'd heard his allegations, just don't put the telly on. Exactly.
I mean, the thing is, BBC is kind of doing this knee-jerk reaction, but what it should have done all this time is got rid of the guy, It's just sort of, it's throwing it's reacting way after the horses bolted.
But they always do this, don't they? Yeah. They always do this.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is what they're doing. They're basically trying to make it look like, well, look, we've done something about this. We really care about this issue, where they've done absolutely nothing for, like I say, well over a decade. The money has been spent, and
the contestants have put the effort in.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I think this is the thing that people struggle with the BBC, is there's just no way to hold them to account. As you said there about the Labour government, that they should have more important things to worry about. The people are really, really struggling out there. And yet you've got the BBC deciding it's going to, crank up the licence fee. Yeah. That's the bigger issue that people are...
As if, by the way, anyone who's been in the BBC couldn't... I mean, genuinely, I could halve their costs in a week by being in there. You just know the level of waste there is absolutely astonishing. If you do any show on the BBC, genuinely, you've got at least 10 people with Oxbridge degrees and clipboards organising even your taxi home. I mean, it's just extraordinary. It's so overstaffed. What I also find fascinating, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, is the BBC every year, and again, I still find this patronising. We're half the population, for God's sake, but they're 100 most inspiring, influential women. The 100 women list for 2024, and yet again, out of 8 billion people on the planet, 4 billion of whom are women, they have been unable to find 100 influential and inspiring women. They've had to include a sodding man. This time, it's apparently a transgender Colombian scientist who called Brigitte Baptiste, who claims to be who's clearly a man, who claims to be a trans, who's a biologist, who's described in the citation as a trans woman who explores the common patterns between biodiversity and gender identity. Apparently, the scientist uses a queer lens to analyse landscapes and species in a bid to expand the notion of nature to better protect ecosystems. I don't understand what any of that is, but I'm pretty sure that this person, A, isn't inspiring or influential, and B, isn't a sodding man and isn't a sodding woman and doesn't have a place on a list of 100 women. Why does the BBC do this?
Oh, I know, and I absolutely agree with you. It's so patronising to have this BBC's 100 Inspiring Women. I mean, who has heard of 95% of these people? And why are we sort of giving accolades to people from across the world when it's British licence fee payers who are funding this exercise? And as you say, they're just gaslighting women because they're not all women.
It's so basic. But there's an outcry every year, and you know they want to do it. But I was also saying to Benedict earlier, if it was a list of 100 men, not that we do that, that'd be awful, you know, they wouldn't put woman on it. If it was 100 influential black people, there wouldn't be a white person on it. If it was 100 of the most influential gay people, there wouldn't be a straight person on it. It only happens to women. It only happens to women.
Absolutely. And this is the thing with the BBC. They just these causes that they push at every opportunity. And it's just insulting, as you say, to women. But as you can see, the whole exercise is insulting. And then they just add, you know, fuel to the fire where you have to throw people in there who aren't actually even women. So it's just so frustrating for people. But I think from our point of view is who's actually going to be interested in this top 100 of anything?
Oh, I mean, The Guardian, probably, and me to have a rant about it. But this is the thing. They do your work for you because this is kind of why the BBC is in the news. Not for great shows. Not for fantastic new ideas, for wonderful comedy. I mean, God, I've made the mistake of actually having Radio 4 on and listened to supposedly a comedy show. I mean, genuinely, like, when is the funny bit happening? I mean, it's just extraordinary. And they're only in the news for things they do wrong. I mean, the British public, frankly, have just got their heads in their hands over the BBC now.
Absolutely, and it's really frustrating after 14 years of Conservative Party rule that we weren't able to, you know, get rid of the licence fee, and the Tories kicked it into the long grass time again, and now we have 5 years of a Labour government we know is going to do absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, you know, I wasn't in favour, as you know, of like the licence fee going, but my God, I'm coming around to that idea now. I really am. Always good to talk to you, Rebecca Ryan, from the Defund the BBC campaign.